You can just shut up, baby, because you hate America and you love abortion.
On an all-new South Park. Okay. The epic season continues.
We want to honor the president's courage.
Stop. South Park.
Season 27, Episode 3 holds a mirror to power. But instead of reflecting back the usual grotesque exaggerations, it seems to be showing us something real. Too real. The trailer opens the door to chaos with Trump and Satan at its center. Trump, who once defined political dominance, is reduced to a desperate man groveling under a table, reaching for validation from the embodiment of evil itself. This moment, crude on the surface, is layered with meaning. It strips away the myth of invincibility surrounding power and exposes it for what it is: fragile desperation. South Park doesn't just ridicule Trump here, it humiliates him. The devil himself, a symbol of ultimate corruption, looks down and refuses him. Imagine the message buried inside that gesture. Even hell has standards. Even Satan sees Trump as beneath him. It is satire turned upside down, where the punchline is not about power's strength, but about its pathetic weakness. And yet, the danger in this setup is not simply the humiliation. It's the unanswered question of what comes next. Does Trump become a permanent fool in Satan's court, clawing for relevance like a court jester begging for scraps? Or does Satan twist his hunger for acceptance into a new kind of mockery, using him as a puppet to prove that desperation has no bottom? That uncertainty is what fuels the suspense. We are left not laughing at the gag, but unsettled by the possibility of what it might evolve into. But the trailer doesn't stop at Trump's humiliation. It hands the spotlight to Cartman, whose smug grin carries more weight than ever before. We've seen him chase chaos for years, but here he steps into a new form: conservative punditry. The parody is obvious, but beneath it lies something chilling. Cartman doesn't care about ideology. He doesn't care about left or right, truth or lies. He cares about attention. And in this world, attention is the only currency that matters. His performance is a mirror of the outrage economy, where provocation becomes profit, and cruelty is disguised as commentary. What makes this terrifying is how good he is at it. Cartman thrives because he has no conscience, no shame, no filter. That shamelessness makes him the perfect symbol of how media manipulation works. And if the theories are true, that Cartman may build his own mock Fox-style empire, dragging Clyde into his orbit, then Episode 3 could become more than a parody. It could become a devastating reflection of how easily outrage can be manufactured, packaged, and sold to the hungry masses. But the suspense here lies not only in Cartman's rise, but in his inevitable fall. What happens if Clyde betrays him, stealing the spotlight he craves? What happens if Cartman, faced with irrelevance, chooses to escalate into something far more destructive? Every glimpse of him in the trailer is a warning that his hunger for relevance may push him into darker, stranger, and more dangerous territory than ever before. And then there is Mr. Mackey. His reappearance at ICE is subtle compared to the chaos of Trump and Cartman, but perhaps more devastating in the long run. Mackey is not a villain by design. He is not even ambitious. He is simply a man caught inside contradictions, drifting through a system he doesn't understand. And that is exactly why his story cuts so deep. South Park has always excelled at exposing hypocrisy, and Mackey is the perfect pawn. The trailer suggests he may once again be entangled in ICE, reopening old wounds and unfinished business. What makes this compelling is not the comedy, but the quiet tragedy. Mackey's bland guidance counselor persona could easily be twisted into propaganda, turning him into the face of enforcement without his consent. Or worse, his attempts to humanize the system, offering counseling, kindness, and compassion in the middle of raids, could backfire horribly, making him look absurd or dangerous in the very system he tries to soften. The suspense lies in the fact that Mackey is neither hero nor villain, just a man sliding further into complicity. And that makes his arc one of the most chilling. He forces us to ask, how much harm can be done not by monsters, but by ordinary people who fail to resist the machinery they are trapped in? All three threads, Trump's humiliation, Cartman's dangerous rise, and Mackey's moral collapse, interlock into a single theme: performance in a collapsing system. South Park is not simply being outrageous here, it is staging a play where every character represents a piece of our own reality. Trump as the desperate fool clawing for relevance, Cartman as the manipulator who thrives in chaos, and Mackey as the quiet bureaucrat who becomes part of the very harm he once feared. The brilliance lies in how these arcs balance each other, loud and absurd on one side, quiet and tragic on the other, but all connected by the same question. How long can performance masks collapse before reality tears through? This is where the suspense lies. Not in whether the jokes will land, but in whether the satire will feel too close to home. And yet, South Park is never satisfied with what it shows us on the surface. The trailer may be bait. It may be designed to mislead us. Fans know this pattern well. The outrageous Trump-Satan scene, Cartman's pundit persona, Mackey's ice return, all could be exaggerated decoys, a smokescreen for something even stranger. If that is true, then the real chaos is yet to be revealed, and that is what makes this episode so thrilling before it even airs. Not the gags, not the spoilers, but the uncertainty. South Park has trapped us in its game, daring us to guess while knowing that whatever we imagine, the truth will be more disturbing. This is satire at its sharpest, comedy at its most dangerous. And this is only the beginning. The deeper you go into the trailer for South Park Season 27, Episode 3, the clearer it becomes that this is not just another episode, but a battlefield of desperation, power, and absurdity. And at the center of this battlefield lies the strangest and most unsettling dynamic of all, the bond, or perhaps the rejection, between Trump and Satan. On the surface, it looks like a throwaway gag. Trump crawling beneath a table, reaching toward the devil's thigh, is ridiculous, crude, and easy to laugh at. But beneath the absurdity is a symbolic inversion so sharp it cuts through the comedy itself. Traditionally, politicians have been portrayed as manipulators of fear, invoking demons, devils, or corruption as symbols of their own power. But here, South Park flips the hierarchy. Trump does not control the devil. He begs from him. He does not stand above corruption. He is cast beneath it. This is humiliation disguised as slapstick, and it works because it stings. It reminds us that ambition, once stripped of its illusions, is nothing more than a begging gesture toward forces that have no interest in granting validation. The real tension lies in what this rejection could mean. If Satan refuses Trump, does he become irrelevant even in the land of corruption? Imagine the irony of a man who once dominated headlines reduced to a desperate fool that even hell itself finds redundant. That possibility makes this moment far more than a gag. It makes it a prophecy. Fans are already buzzing with theories. Some believe Satan will use Trump as a clownish pawn, keeping him around only to mock him. Others think Satan's rejection will push Trump into an even more grotesque spiral, chasing relevance so obsessively that he becomes a parody not of power, but of irrelevance itself. And if South Park leans into that irony, it could turn Trump into one of the darkest punchlines the show has ever delivered. Not as a villain, but as a man begging to matter and failing at every turn. But while Trump stumbles, Cartman rises. His evolution into a conservative pundit parody may seem like typical South Park exaggeration, but the undertones are disturbingly real. The trailer shows flashes of his smug confidence, his relentless pursuit of attention, and his uncanny ability to thrive on outrage. Unlike Trump, who is portrayed as desperate for approval, Cartman represents the opposite. Someone who understands that attention is power and outrage is the fastest way to gain it. What makes this chilling is not the parody itself, but how accurately it reflects the real world. Cartman doesn't care about ideology. He doesn't care about truth. He only cares about views, clicks, and the control that comes with them. In this sense, he is the perfect mirror of the media outrage economy. He is a child who has learned the mechanics of manipulation so perfectly that he embodies them without effort. And this is where the fear comes in. Because if Cartman, a selfish and shameless kid, can master the game, then what does that say about the system itself? Theories are already spreading that Cartman may not stop at being a parody. He could launch a full-blown Fox-style show within the episode, turning his hunger for attention into a spectacle that consumes the entire town. But as always with Cartman, the real suspense lies in his relationships. Clyde, who has been teased as part of this arc, may either become his sidekick or his betrayer. If Clyde supports him, the two could form a twisted duo, manipulating outrage together for clout. But if Clyde betrays him, taking the spotlight Cartman believes belongs to him, then we could witness one of the most brutal spirals in Cartman's history. Because every time Cartman feels irrelevant, he escalates. Every time he feels pushed aside, he lashes out with more venom than before. This is the ticking bomb hidden in the trailer. Not just what Cartman will do, but how far he will go when desperation pushes him into darker, stranger territory. And then there is Mr. Mackey, whose storyline threads quietly through the chaos like a knife cutting beneath the surface. Unlike Trump or Cartman, Mackey is not loud, not absurd, not desperate for attention. He is something more chilling, a man trapped inside contradictions, drifting deeper into complicity without even realizing it. His reappearance at ICE is no simple callback. It is the reopening of a wound, a chance for the writers to drag him back into a storyline that forces us to confront the moral fog of bureaucracy. Mackey is not evil, but that is what makes him dangerous. Because he represents the ordinary person who becomes part of a machine designed for cruelty without ever choosing to be. Fans are already speculating about where this arc might lead. Some believe he will become the unwitting mascot of ICE, his bland counselor persona turned into propaganda. Others think his attempts to humanize the system will backfire spectacularly, making him a target or turning him into an object of ridicule. Either way, Mackey's storyline doesn't need to be flashy to sting. It is satire in its quietest, most devastating form, reminding us that complicity is not always about ambition, but about silence. Together, these arcs, Trump's rejection, Cartman's rise, and Mackey's collapse, interlock into something larger than themselves. They create a theme of performance, of desperate acts inside a collapsing system where everyone is playing a role and no one is in control. Trump plays the desperate fool, Cartman the ruthless manipulator, Mackey the lost bureaucrat. And South Park pulls them together in a dance of absurdity that feels too close to reality for comfort. But the real hook lies in the possibility that none of this is real, that the trailer itself is a misdirection. Because South Park has always thrived on subverting expectations. What if the Trump Satan scene never plays out as teased? What if Cartman's pundit persona is exaggerated bait? What if Mackey's ICE return is only a fragment of a different story? This uncertainty is the engine that drives speculation. It is what makes Episode 3 feel like more than just an episode. It makes it a cultural moment, one where the suspense lies not only in what happens on screen, but in whether we were ever supposed to believe the trailer at all. When we pull the lens back wider, the South Park Season 27, Episode 3 trailer stops being about individual characters and starts becoming something larger. A portrait of satire stretched to its breaking point. At the center of this portrait is still the bizarre, unsettling relationship between Trump and Satan. But the meaning deepens the longer you think about it. If Satan represents ultimate corruption, the embodiment of everything humanity has ever feared about power gone wrong, then his refusal to indulge Trump flips the entire metaphor upside down. Instead of Satan being the lowest point, Trump sinks beneath him. Instead of Trump gaining dominance by aligning with evil, he is humiliated, dismissed, and cast aside. That irony burns because it forces us to question power itself. What does it mean if even hell sees Trump as redundant? What does it mean if a figure who once commanded the attention of millions becomes so desperate that he grovels for validation from the embodiment of damnation and still cannot get it? South Park has always thrived on reversals, but this one cuts deeper. It reduces arrogance not to villainy, but to irrelevance. And that may be the most brutal punishment the show could possibly give him. But as Trump flails, Cartman thrives. His transformation into a conservative pundit parody is more than a gag. It is a calculated evolution designed to show how outrage itself has become the most powerful weapon in modern society. Cartman doesn't just mimic commentators, he becomes them. Smug, manipulative, and addicted to provocation. What makes this chilling is that Cartman is a child, yet the parody works because the mechanics of manipulation are so simple that even he can wield them flawlessly. This is South Park's satire at its sharpest. It is saying that the culture of viral outrage is so hollow, so mechanical, that even an elementary school kid can master it. And in Cartman's hands, that parody becomes terrifyingly real. Theories are already swirling that his Fox-style show may not just be a side gag, but a central subplot. Some fans believe he will build a media empire within the town, dragging Clyde into the spotlight as either a partner or a rival. If Clyde betrays him, as many suspect, then we could see one of the most brutal spirals Cartman has ever endured. Because Cartman's greatest fear has never been punishment, it has always been irrelevance. Every time he feels ignored, every time the spotlight shifts away, he escalates. He claws for attention with venom and cruelty, and if betrayal pushes him far enough, Episode 3 could unleash a version of Cartman more dangerous than we've ever seen before. One who pushes performance beyond parody and into pure destruction. Meanwhile, Mackey's arc runs in the opposite direction, quieter but no less devastating. His reappearance at ICE signals unfinished business, a storyline that the writers clearly want to reopen for maximum discomfort. Mackey has always been the voice of bland authority, the man who tries to keep things under control but rarely succeeds. Placing him back in the machinery of ICE makes him something far more tragic. He is not a villain by design, but a man trapped in contradictions. And that is exactly what makes his role sting. If Trump represents desperation and Cartman represents manipulation, Mackey represents complicity, the quiet acceptance of systems that harm others because resisting them feels impossible. Theories around his role are already circulating. Some believe he will become a propaganda figure, his mild counseling language turned into slogans for enforcement. Others think his attempts at kindness will collapse into farce, making him the butt of ridicule while also exposing the futility of compassion in corrupt systems. Either way, Mackey is not being used for laughs. He is being used as a mirror, forcing us to see how easily ordinary people can become cogs in monstrous institutions without even realizing it. That is the darkest punchline South Park can deliver. Not the grand spectacle of Trump or Cartman, but the quiet tragedy of someone who slides into complicity because they never found the strength to resist. The brilliance of this setup is how these arcs interlock. Trump humiliated by rejection, Cartman empowered by manipulation, Mackey swallowed by complicity. All of them embody different shades of the same theme. Performance inside a collapsing system. Trump performs desperation, Cartman performs outrage, Mackey performs bureaucracy, and none of them escape the collapse beneath their feet. This is what makes Episode 3 feel more dangerous than the average South Park outing. It's not just trying to make us laugh, it's trying to make us uncomfortable, to blur the line between parody and reality until we start questioning whether the absurdity is really absurd at all. And yet, there's always the chance that this is all misdirection. South Park has made a tradition of showing us outrageous moments in trailers that never fully play out in the episode. It delights in planting theories only to pull the rug out at the last moment. What if the Trump Satan scene is nothing more than a brief gag, designed to trick us into overthinking? What if Cartman's pundit persona collapses quickly into irrelevance, mocked for how shallow it really is? What if Mackey's ICE arc never materializes beyond a single cameo? The show thrives on this kind of deception. It forces us to consume the chaos the same way we consume modern media, desperately, hungrily, analyzing every frame while knowing deep down that we may have been baited from the very start. That is the brilliance of South Park's satire. The joke isn't only on the characters, it's on us. It exposes not just their desperation, manipulation, and complicity, but our own appetite for scandal and outrage. And by the time the episode airs, the real punchline may be that we never saw the real story coming at all.